And every time they pulled the back seat out, trying to find where somebody had stuffed drugs in the back seat, and they never found anything. But when I get back home, here's the funny thing. I go to put my back seat back in because the last cops, and I think this was in Mexico, not in the United States, but because I was foolish enough to go to Mexico in this condition. But I went to go put the back seat in, and something fell down. It was a medicine bottle, and I opened up the medicine bottle, and it had 5 vials in it. 3 were powder and 2 were rock. And it was stuffed up under the back of the seat, not the bottom of the seat. And I was amazed that on 6 strip searches, the police never found this.
You got lucky.
And of course, you would have been held accountable and screwed for that.
I bought an ex-police car. It was full of spent shell casings when I picked it up.
So you bought
Maybe God was sticking out for you, Aron.
Basically, you bought drugs from the cops then. That's what you're
That
saying.
was the funny thing. My car was not just full of drugs illicitly that I didn't know about. It was also full of bullet casings.
Wow.
Like, who the hell did I buy my car from?
You got some bullets, man. Like, they spared you from getting shot by the police, and then
How often is this cop that had the car before I bought it? How often was he discharging his firearm? Because I found 10 bullet casings under my mat for the floor mat under the gas pedal.
Don't
Who
they
did
go
you buy
through
it
all
from?
that before they sell it?
Yeah, who did you buy it from? They need to go to Auto Bell next time.
Yeah, it was an ex-California Highway Patrol car, and I bought it in Arizona. I don't know if that means anything.
Where,
so that's good drugs going got straight lines now, too.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And that brings up a point, because how often do you hear, I know in almost every video, the reason that the police engage is because they call it suspicious activity. And what's amazing to me is that and this is a good response, you hear the person ask, okay, officer, is suspicion a misdemeanor or felony? And so many times you hear them say misdemeanor, or one video I've seen said felony. So they obviously don't know their own laws, correct?
Or
you're talking about the Ohio cop, that recent one that Ohio Guardian 2.0 or BLW TV put out, where their police chief said that suspicion is a felony or misdemeanor.
Right.
That is the most absurd thing. It really makes them look bad. It also makes their mayor look bad, because he was also part of that call as well. When I hear those kind of things, that's another reason why I believe that these auditors out there, the First Amendment auditors and cop watchers, are needed, because they help educate even their own police officers that they don't know the law. You'll be. I hate this general conception from people out there. I guess you would call them the keyboard warriors. They like to think that everybody on the internet is an attorney, and it's not true. There are some people out there that actually do take the time to read their laws in their area, and they understand it, and they exercise those out in public. And you'll be surprised. Nowadays, the average Joe probably knows more about their basic law than the police officers do.
So what do you recommend?
That's disturbing, because it doesn't matter that we as the populace, necessarily doesn't matter that we're not aware that you can record anywhere. It's when the cops come in to arrest you for recording. Mm-hmm. 'Cause I've seen videos of that too. I'm sure you have.
Sure.
I mean, you've probably been involved in some where you've been arrested for recording the police, right?
Actually, that brings up a funny point. I've never been arrested for doing that. I've always, and in fact, I did an audit on my own police station, and it's like the question, Kyle, that you had before, like the way you interact with an officer if they come up to you. I went into a police station and I saw some awesome, interesting, looking display cases with old police memorabilia from back in the 40s and the 50s, and I wanted to take some films. I noticed there was an officer there at the window, and I said, "How you doing, officer? I'm just here to take some photos of some of the display cases here. I'm not going to interfere in your duties or anything." And he says, "Oh, no problem. Go ahead and do that." It's all how you interact with that officer to begin with. There are going to be sometimes cops that come up to you and act like a total asshole towards you, and they're going to say, "What are you doing? Like, why are you here? Get out of here. This is not, you're not supposed to be here." Well, actually I am. I'm allowed to be here. This is public. There's ways to handle those kind of things. And I do see a lot of these auditors, they do handle themselves very well. And then there's some out there that don't. And I'm just going to come out and say it. A lot of my viewers are probably watching this right now too, and that a lot of people don't do that. There's one individual in particular. I'm not going to glorify his name because he's been caught doing some pretty terrible things. But one big thing I say you never do, and you guys can talk about this here in a second, never call the cops on yourself, ever. Not to get a reaction, because and I'm going to tell you, this is a kind of a big thing in our community, and we talk about it like through our own private forums and things of that sort. There are auditors out there that have been caught that call the police on themselves to get a reaction, and that's not what we're about. I don't. Right. If I hear about that, I don't associate with that individual any longer, because that's not what we're about.
That's ridiculous.
Your mic's muted.
You're muted, Aron. Still muted.
But while he's figuring out his mute, let me ask you, because this is one of the contentions that we've had on the sensationalism aspect of what the First Amendment auditors do, because I do support First Amendment auditors, because I do think the cops, one, should know the rules and regulations and laws. Two, I think that the public should exercise their freedoms, and if you don't, I think you do have a tendency to lose them. However, as you said, there's a couple fine lines here that need to be really kind of sussed out. One, the sensationalism aspect. These videos are going on YouTube. People are putting them out there for people to watch. Fine, great. I think that's spectacular. However, that does give the rise for the propensity to have an altercation, right? As you said, these people calling cops on themselves, which I think is just abhorrent. That destroys the whole point of a First Amendment audit, right? The second would be, what do you recommend when cops are able to lie to people? We all know that. Okay. But when they say things like, you are breaking the law, suspicion is a misdemeanor or a felony, which clearly it's not, in those cases, you do recommend always comply with the officer, right? You should never fight an officer. If they think you should be arrested, you get arrested, right? You never fight any of that stuff.
I always tell individuals, and I've preached this time and time again on my channel, and also a lot of other auditors, bigger name auditors out there know this. If you know you're going into a situation and the officer is becoming hard to deal with, and you know that it could go further and it can become one of those, get on the ground, stop resisting type of situations, then I would suggest using the most important right that you have, and that's the fifth. Let them do their investigation and just shut up, because they cannot do anything if you don't say anything.
Or extricate yourself from the situation if they allow you to, if you're not being detained.
Right. Okay. Exactly. Know your limits. I mean, I can't tell an auditor what to do. It's his decision or her decision what to do. But if you know, you're going to know inside your gut whether this officer is going to be the bad one or if it's going to be a good one. Some people have, like, look at Mexican Padilla. He pushes the envelope so hard. He'll start screaming. He'll curse.
He agitates. But do you think he got set up, though? I mean, I watched that particular video.
Honestly,
it was very clear. They told him, the secretary did tell him he was able to go in. There's a public area. Go ahead.
Honestly, I don't want to reveal too much of this because the attorneys have this right now, and I'm privy to a lot of inside information as far as Leon Valley and also the auditors. But I will tell you this: it does seem like a setup, and Leon Valley probably needs to answer why their employee decided to give permission. Why? That's all I'm going to say. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Was it a restricted area?
Yeah.
Or was the chief just not wanting back there? Like, is that the area that he went to a restricted area, or do you know?
It's that area particularly is for the public to go in when they have city meetings. A lot of offices are in there, as far as the city manager, the mayor. When they come in, they can, they have those offices there, but they're locked. When he was in there, you can clearly see those doors were completely locked. He was taking photos of pictures of the city officials and just getting a lay of what it looks like. It wasn't a horrible thing. The biggest issue that I had with that, regardless of the fact that he did, antagonize the police chief, he was given permission. There was no sign saying that you couldn't go in there. There was nothing that said that it was restricted. If they were restricted area, those doors should have been locked, period.
Yeah. Okay, but cannot permission be revoked? Let's say that it was a restricted area. There's two scenarios. There's restricted or not restricted. If it was restricted and the secretary gave permission, what she didn't have to give, or even if she did have permission to give permission, could that permission not be revoked? If the police chief said, you know what, I'm overriding her, I'm asking you to leave, at that point,
I agree.
He would be in the right, correct?
Well, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, if the police chief says, I'll give that to the chief. I mean, I'm not going to say that he's, perfect in everything he does, because I can tell you he's not.
Oh, he overreacted. Big time.
Yeah, he way overreacted. But when the chief did ask, hey, you need to leave, that moment, Mexican Padilla should have known that this guy's going to escalate without de-escalation. That's the moment I tell everybody: just know your know your part, know when it's time to go, because if you would have left, you still would have had a decent video. You would have had a reaction out of that police officer because he did something that was, kind of off the wall. You had permission, and you would have gone. That's not the way it worked. Unfortunately, he paid the price for that.
What do you feel about Aron? I'm surprised that with you being in Texas, you haven't seen any of these like just out in public, because a lot of like Texas, I believe, is the ground zero for First Amendment audit. Wouldn't you say, Black Label?
More so Second Amendment audit more than anything else.
But Second Amendment, but it's now starting to become more First Amendment and also Second Amendment, because those guys are kind of like intertwined with each other now with OCT. Right. OCT is a very big organization out there. But when you compare like from California and Texas, there's always that that little rivalry that goes on there.
Yeah.
But all in all, we all have the same mission.
So, I'll tell you what I did see. I think both of the cities. I think it might have been the same city, but if it isn't, I think that both of the cities were in Texas. You had a guy walking down the street with an AK-47 strapped over his shoulder.
Yeah.
Right.
One police car pulls up and asks him, "What are you doing with that machine gun?" And the guy says, "I'm just exercising my rights, officer." And the guy says, "Okay, well, go about your day."
Right.
Black guy does exactly the same thing on what looked to me to be the exact same street. 5 police cars pull out, guns drawn, and that guy has to get down on the ground, face down, and his 7-month pregnant girlfriend had to get down, face down as well. And they didn't care about his exercising his rights. They confiscate his gun.
Right.
That's a good point. Because similar to that, and not so much with the the gun thing, it's not right for them to treat one or the other. But even something as simple as you go to I believe it was Texas Sheepdog. That's a guy, right? Texas Sheepdog.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he did a thing where he was at Costco, and I believe it was actually with Turner, and we're going to talk about Turner versus Driver here in a few minutes anyway. But Turner is a black guy, and he, if you don't know, he enacted change because he was detained for a long period of time. He wound up suing for did he sue for monetary or just a?
That was monetary.
Okay, yeah, and the Louisiana the Fifth Circuit Supreme Court in Louisiana wound up hearing his case and voted in his favor, but they both went to Costco and they purchased, I believe, some milkshakes, and they both got a receipt for it. And Texas Sheepdog's like, "I'm going to walk out and not show my receipt. I'm just going to refuse to do it." And because apparently I didn't know this. This was something I didn't know, but apparently that's legal. You don't have to show your receipt that you paid for something when you leave one of these stores.
That seems strange to me. Don't they have people posted these?
I'm going to correct you on this one though, because here's what I know about Costco and like Sam's Club and those big ones. Those are membership organizations. You have to pay to become a member there. Mm-hmm. If you go to a Walmart and you go past that greeter and you say, "I'm not going to show show the receipt because I purchased it," that's absolutely fine. There are some, I guess, membership companies out there that do say that you do have to show your receipt, but Costco wasn't one of them.
Yeah, and can I also?
So I know what you're talking about. That
because I've been a part of Stops, retail Stops. I was a store manager and retail manager for many years, and I worked with LP very closely. They can ask you for a receipt if they stop you. However, if they stop you and they don't have a reason to, it's a bad stop, they call it, and bad stops go against the LP, and those people can be fired for bad stops. But if they think you've stolen, they more than what they can ask you. You don't have to give it, but at that point, that's when they call the police and they just let them take it from there. But they can ask, right? But that's the difference between somebody who has suspicion of stealing something, other than like Costco, where you just buy the stuff and you have to show a receipt. It depends on the building rules. They say, okay, this is our property. It's still our property until it leaves the building, kind of thing, right?
But the thing about this video was that Texas Sheepdog right past her said he wasn't showing the receipt. There wasn't an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't When Turner, the black guy, went to do this, it was.
Well, and the same thing. I mean, do you remember John Crawford III? Do you remember that shooting? I mean, he was a 22-year-old African American guy who he was buying a BB gun. He was purchasing it in the store. Some customer saw him, thought there was a threat for some reason, lied about it later, actually said he was waving the gun around, which he recanted. But a couple cops came in, they killed him. They didn't even ask him. They didn't even ask him to put down the weapon. They came in, open fired.
Outrageous.
I complained once recently, or by recently I mean in the last couple of years,